It's me, Darren Chang, here to do a full review of a new bag. This is the Peak Design 10-liter Everyday Sling version 2. You can see here that it's a compact camera bag that shares the same design cues as Peak Design's famous Everyday Backpack. So, will this bag earn a lose it or a use it? Keep watching to find out. The Peak Design 10-liter Everyday Sling version 2 is definitely a camera bag, and therefore I'm not going to use the criteria that I use to judge crossover day packs. Instead, I will simply walk you through how well it works for me as a photo bag. Before I dig into this, if you want a full tour of the bag instead of a review that focuses on what works for me and what doesn't work for me, then go to this first look video over here. Otherwise, let's move on with the review. For a shoulder bag or sling, I'm looking for something that, 1, is lightweight, 2, is easy to access while still on my body, 3, one that allows for fast shooting and rapid lens changes on the fly. Typically, I'd be using a single strap bag for 2 to 3 hour hikes or on a trail, or maybe a full day city tour with lots of stops along the way. The photography is less about making art and more about creating a story of the day. I might only carry one extra lens beyond the one that is attached to the body of my camera. It's certainly not going to need a tripod or a flash, and I might even skip the extra battery if I know that I have a fully charged one in the camera. It'd be nice to have a spot for a small laptop or a big iPad so I could look at the images when I stop for a quick bite, but it's not super critical to have that space. Let's just take a look and see how this sling in particular works out for me. So this thing holds way more in the bag than it looks like from the outside. If you take a look here, let me just sort of zoom in on this thing, and you can see here that I've put in here a mirrorless camera with a grip. And I do have a pancake lens on here. What's important to note is that I can't set this very easily in this direction. I could, but you'll see that it really becomes very difficult to pull out of here if I actually have it set in that direction. So it's much easier to set it in this direction, which works if you have a relatively short snout or short lens on there. But otherwise, you can see here, I definitely have enough room here for a lens on either side. In fact, I even tried to put a water bottle into these spots. Unfortunately, take a look at this is my Hydro Flask. It doesn't quite fit in here. It's a little bit too tall. I could wiggle it in there and maybe get it to squeeze in there, but it's kind of difficult, and it would make it very hard to open and close the zipper. So frankly, it's probably not going to be a bag that will be able to accommodate that particular Hydro Flask. So in general, you really have to be careful not to overload one of these bags because it still is a single strap bag, so it's not going to carry heavy loads all that well. It's not meant to carry heavy loads. Let me show you around the rest of the bag to show you some things that I don't really love about it. In particular, this outside pocket that they have here, it's okay, it's just not great. I think it would have been so much nicer to have it subdivided in such a way that I could put my wallet in one side and maybe slide my sunglasses into another. So it's not terrifically useful. The other thing is it's a little bit hard to dig into because it does have this roof of sorts. This is a zipper cover, and this is made with pretty stiff, stout material. It's not super easy to move this out of the way. I think it would have just been better had they not had a zipper cover here and just allowed you to get access to this zipper. Perhaps even make it more of like a frown shape, an upside down U, so that you could come along. It would be not unlike what they already have here to get into the main compartment, but do that for this little compartment, this pocket in the front end. I think it would have made it a lot more usable. As it is, it's okay, but frankly, for my wallet and my sunglasses and my cell phone, it actually became much easier simply to use one of the pockets in my coat or even in my pants. So I really didn't take advantage of this pocket up front because it was so difficult to dig into. Like I said, the main compartment is definitely roomy and it does fit that gripped body. The funny thing about it though is that because of how stiff this is, it's a little bit difficult to pry this lid open. So I want you to imagine this. I have this on my back and I want to quickly pull my camera out. When I do so, I really have to hold this open because it snaps close pretty easily, right? And then you're fighting with it. You really have to hold it open in order to get access. It would be so much nicer if this stayed open on its own rather than having to fight with it. It's not a big deal, but it certainly is something where I feel like they could have included some sort of hinge point to allow this thing to flop forward and stay forward and out of your way as you're messing around with your camera and potentially changing out lenses, etc. It also has a spot here for a 13-inch laptop, a MacBook Pro, or a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. But let me show you how difficult it is to actually use this pocket for one of those devices. Let me go grab my son's 13-inch MacBook Pro. When you try to put it in here, notice here that there's this sort of roof to this thing, and the actual laptop pocket is behind or underneath this roof here. So it's really kind of difficult to get the laptop in there. And imagine with the, having a couple lenses in here, it would be even more difficult. So yes, it can fit the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and it could certainly fit a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but it's not super accessible. So it really takes some effort to pry it the heck out of there. So it's not super usable in that regard. And frankly, I'm not sure how important it would be for me to have something like a big tech device like this. If I'm just going on a quick shoot, I would probably be able to check out the images on the camera itself, and that would suffice. So it's not super essential, but it's strange that they do have a slot here for a device, a large device, and yet it's not terribly useful. Okay, so was this comfortable when it was on my shoulder for 2 hours? I would say so, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't overload it. And again, that's one of the most important things. Because it's not that great of a strap. You can see here that it's pretty thin. It's only about 2 inches wide. And the other thing that's sort of strange about it doesn't have a lot of grippiness here. And so it kept wanting to sort of slide around on my back, and it wanted to move to more of a horizontal position, which it's not as comfortable in a horizontal. You really want these things, when you're wearing a sling, you want it to be in a sort of diagonal on your back like this. And what it kept wanting to do is slide into this position. And when it does that, what's most uncomfortable about it is then the strap sort of pushes up against your jugular, and so it always felt like it was cutting off circulation to me. So I didn't super love that, but if I just tugged on it a little bit, I could get it much more comfortable and I could move on, but wasn't ideal there. I do wish that this had that extra cross strap that comes out from the side of the bag and connects up to here for extra stability. It's especially important when you're cycling or you're running across campus or running downtown to go catch a cab, whatever it is. Having that little piece there for extra security really works well. So in case you don't understand what I'm talking about, let me slip this off and show you a bag that does have one of those. All right, so what I'm wearing right now is the Green Room 136 Metro Monger. I'm just going to turn around so you can see what this looks like. So you can see how it sits diagonally across my back. This is a classic sling. But what Green Room 136 does is they add this very simple strap here that really stabilizes tremendously the load. So it just connects to the bottom side, you can see here, and comes up and has one of these quick buckles here that allows it to really stabilize. So it feels much more like a backpack on you, despite the fact that it's only a single strap. I really do wish that Peak Design had put one of those into this, designed one into this bag, because I think it really would have made a big difference. And they certainly have the lashing points that would allow you to be able to do that. That's a small thing that makes a big difference in terms of how secure and balanced the pack actually, or the bag, feels on your back. So I'd say in general, this bag here, the Peak Design, it doesn't feel as comfy and balanced as some of the other bags that I've tried that are these sling bags, whether it's the Metro Monger that you just saw moments ago, or even the Mindshift Photocross 13, this guy right here, okay? Those two bags are much more comfortable and I think a little bit more usable as sling bags. This is a Peak Design bag, and straight from the start all the bags that they make are incredibly well thought out and well put together. The materials that they use, the stitching, the basically every piece of the bag was well put together, and you can trust that these bags are going to hold up for years. It is a little bit stiff. I mean, part of the build quality means that the bag itself is a little bit stiff and maybe a little bit unforgiving. I wish it would perhaps form to my body a little bit better rather than feeling like it's sitting away from my body. But I mean, one of the problems is that if it's too flexible, then it's not going to protect your gear as well as this bag would. It does have weatherproof zippers throughout, which I think is pretty handy. So if you get caught in a storm or something like that, you can quickly run to the next store, duck into the next coffee shop or whatever. You really don't want to be using this thing out in the rain deliberately because it's just not going to keep your gear dry. That's not its intention. So build quality really is top notch for this. You can expect, as with all Peak Design bags, that it's going to last you forever. And you should know that I'm a huge fan of this bag way over here, which you might be able to see just the part of. And that's the Peak Design travel bag. In fact, one of the things that I was hoping is that this sling bag would act sort of like a camera cube and fit inside of that travel bag. It doesn't. This is too big for it. But that's not the intention. Peak Design didn't design it for that. I was just kind of hoping it would. In fact, I think maybe their 6-liter version of this might serve that pretty well. But they do also, you should know that Peak Design does make their own camera cubes for that travel bag, which is probably the thing that I should be getting. You can see that this bag has sort of a more professional look rather than a sporty look. The gray, I think, actually is probably a little more feminine than I wanted it to be. I think I probably should have gone for the black, but I'm sort of partial to this gray, and so that's why I got suckered into it. But I do think that if I were to do this again, I would get it in the black version rather than the gray. Not that it's built differently. Oh, actually, that's not true. The gray version is made with blue sign materials, so that it's much more sustainable in terms of its build than the black one. So maybe I should stick with the gray one here. There's no doubt this thing looks like a more professional looking bag, and so it works really nicely in the urban environment, much more so than, let's say, this Mindshift bag. I mean, partially it's because the bright orange colors and the buckles hanging off it and such. So this works better in the urban environment. Maybe it doesn't look quite right on the trail. So, it's not perfect, but it is unobtrusive, and I think it looks better than a lot of other bags, so I really can't say that it takes away. So I'd actually say that this isn't a bad crossover look. So in summary, I would say that I probably should have picked up the medium-sized bag rather than this larger 10-liter one. The medium size is a 6-liter. Because I think that the 6-liter probably would have served my needs just as well for sort of a quick draw light kit. It would have been more stable on my back because it's smaller. It's going to have less momentum. I think that it would have just felt a little bit closer to my body and then more stable when I was on the move. That said, I still think that the bag is good. It's just not great. I'd be more keen to use that Mindshift sling or the Metromonger that I showed you moments ago, because I think that in terms of access and comfort and stability, those bags have it better than this one does. This thing is built better than those ones. Maybe actually the Metromonger probably is built just as well. In terms of the comfort and usability, I don't think this quite measures up. So for this Peak Design 10-liter everyday sling, this is a lose it. Sorry, Peak Design. Doesn't mean I don't love you guys. I think you do great stuff, but I don't think this really works all that well for me. In general, I would say slings are those things that are of limited use anyway for me, and it's hard for me to justify purchasing them if I weren't reviewing them. And of course, you might feel otherwise. Maybe you love slings. But I'm just as happy from my perspective to use an everyday carry that's basically empty for my ultralight shooting kit. And it might not be as fast to access my camera gear when I'm using it, but it is way more comfortable and way more stable and certainly a lot more versatile. If I don't know, if I'm walking through town and I see something I want to buy, I can actually put food into that, or I can put whatever, a gift for my wife or something in the bag. You really wouldn't be able to do that with a sling because there's just not room past the camera kit that you have in there. Anyway, there you have it. The Peak design. It didn't quite measure up for me, but it might measure up better for you. Take a look at my other videos. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you can. And looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Take it easy.